Do you have any idea who you're speaking to? Every fork in the glittering restaurant froze in midair. Heads turned toward the commotion, their eyes landing on a tall, blonde woman whose voice cracked with outrage. She loomed over a quiet table where a young woman in a plain navy dress sat with calm dignity. The blonde's manicured finger pointed sharply, her words dripping with disdain. "I will not be spoken to like that by some cheap, classless nobody." Before the young woman could reply, the blonde's hand slashed through the air. Smack! The echo of the slap carried across the dining room, silencing conversations. Some guests gasped, others clutched their phones already recording. "Who even is she?" a man whispered from across the room. "Probably wandered in by mistake," a woman muttered back, trying to stifle nervous laughter. But the woman in the navy dress did not flinch. She sat still, her dark eyes steady, her jaw firm. What had just happened wasn't just an insult. It was a spark that would ignite a chain of events no one in that room could have imagined. In less than a minute, the blonde's entire world would come crashing down. That same afternoon, in the grand halls of a sprawling Bel Air mansion, sunlight spilled through tall windows and danced across polished marble floors. Elena Brooks stood before her walk-in closet, her hands gliding over rows of dresses. She paused at a simple navy piece, its cotton fabric soft beneath her fingertips. She was 28, her beauty understated yet undeniable. Her smooth, warm complexion seemed to glow. Her expressive brown eyes spoke volumes, and her gentle smile carried the quiet strength that had first captured her husband's heart years ago. "This one feels right," she murmured, pulling the modest dress from its hanger. From the adjoining bathroom came the sound of rushing water. Her husband, Nathan Brooks, was finishing his shower. Nathan, 35, was the kind of man whose presence filled every room he entered. Tall, confident, with sharp intelligence gleaming in his green eyes. Those same eyes had helped him build a technology empire worth billions. His company, Vertex Systems, had transformed the world of cloud computing. But tonight, his thoughts weren't on business. Tonight, all that mattered was the evening ahead. "Elena, darling, are you ready?" His voice carried out from the bathroom, softened by the trace of his Boston roots. "We've got that dinner reservation tonight." Elena smiled faintly, slipping into the dress. She clasped a delicate silver necklace around her neck, a gift Nathan had given her on their second anniversary. As she caught her reflection in the mirror, she felt that old tug in her chest. Part of her still saw the girl who grew up in a cramped apartment in Detroit, struggling with life's unfairness. And yet here she stood, the wife of one of America's most powerful men. When Nathan emerged, adjusting the lapels of his charcoal gray suit, Elena saw his expression soften. The man who could intimidate a boardroom of investors looked at her with unguarded love. "You look beautiful," he said, drawing her into his arms. "You always do." Elena leaned against him, her fingers brushing his tie. She knew what he was really thinking. "You wanted me to wear the Valentino dress, didn't you?" she teased gently. Nathan's thumb traced her cheek. "I want you to wear whatever makes you happy. It's just people at places like that judge quickly. They don't always understand." Her heart tightened at his words. This was the constant tension between them, his instinct to protect her versus her need to stay true to herself. She sighed softly. "I'll change if you want." But Nathan caught her hand before she could move. His voice was firm yet tender. "No, don't. I fell in love with the woman who wore a $15 dress to our first coffee date and made it look priceless. Don't ever change for anyone, not even me." The memory drew a smile to both their faces. 3 years ago, a tiny coffee shop had brought them together. Her, a passionate literacy advocate barely scraping by, and him, a burned-out entrepreneur searching for something real. That day had changed everything. 20 minutes later, Nathan's midnight blue Bentley slid smoothly through the tree-lined streets of Beverly Hills. The October air was warm, clinging to the last traces of summer, and Elena gazed out the window as boutiques and restaurants blurred past. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress. "I always feel like I'm playing a part in places like this," she admitted quietly. Nathan reached across the console, taking her hand with reassuring warmth. "You belong everywhere I belong," he said. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His words comforted her, but unease still lingered in her chest. She knew all too well how quickly people judged, how little they cared for truth once appearances had already written the story. Tonight she felt that truth pressing closer than ever. When they pulled up to Spago, one of Los Angeles' most exclusive restaurants, Elena drew a deep breath. The valet opened her door, and she stepped out onto the pavement in her modest flats and navy dress. Around her, women sparkled in gowns that dripped with jewels, their handbags costing more than she had once made in a year. Mrs. Brooks, the maitre d', greeted them warmly as they entered. "Your usual table is ready." The dining room hummed with quiet elegance. Crystal glasses chimed gently. Soft jazz floated from hidden speakers, and waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables. Elena followed Nathan to their reserved spot, aware of glances flicking her way, some curious, others dismissive. She had long since learned to read those looks, the kind that slid past her plain clothes and landed instead on her husband. Nathan leaned close and whispered, "Relax, you're the most beautiful woman in this room." Before Elena could reply, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. "It's Tokyo," he murmured apologetically. "The Matsuda deal. I need to take this. 5 minutes, I promise." Elena nodded. She was used to these interruptions. Even their date nights couldn't completely escape the demands of his empire. Nathan kissed her forehead before stepping toward the bar area, phone pressed to his ear. Left alone, Elena sipped her water and let her gaze wander across the glowing room. The chandeliers glittered overhead. Laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to enjoy the peaceful rhythm of it all, until she noticed her. At a nearby table, a blonde woman with sharp features and expensive taste was staring at her with thinly veiled hostility. Every detail of the woman screamed curated perfection: designer dress, flawless hair, jewelry that gleamed with deliberate care. Her gaze raked Elena from head to toe, her lips curling with something between disdain and amusement. Elena told herself she was imagining it. She reached for her glass again, trying to focus elsewhere, but the woman's eyes didn't waver. Finally, the blonde stood and began walking toward her. Elena's pulse quickened. She knew that expression, the look of someone who believed themselves untouchable, who saw others as trespassers in a world they claimed as theirs. The woman stopped beside Elena's table, her perfume sharp and overpowering. Her blue eyes narrowed as she spoke in a voice sugar-coated with false politeness. "Excuse me," she said. "I think you may be sitting here by mistake." Elena's brows furrowed slightly as she looked up. "I'm sorry, a mistake." The blonde woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. She stood tall, exuding the kind of wealth-polished confidence that came from years of getting her way. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she shifted her stance, ensuring nearby diners could see the exchange. "Well," the woman said, voice carrying just enough to draw attention, "I couldn't help but notice you sitting here alone. I thought perhaps you were lost. This isn't the sort of place where just anyone can sit down." Conversations in the room began to quiet. Forks paused midair. Elena felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning toward her, the anticipation of drama hanging like static in the air. "I'm not lost," Elena replied calmly, though her fingers tightened around her glass. "I'm having dinner with my husband." The woman's laugh was sharp, brittle, almost theatrical. "Your husband?" She glanced around exaggeratedly. "I don't see anyone with you. And forgive me for saying so, but I'm struggling to understand how someone like you could possibly afford a place like this." The phrase "someone like you" hit Elena like a stone. She knew exactly what it meant. "My husband stepped away to take a call," Elena said, her tone firm but measured. "He'll be back shortly." "How convenient," the woman sneered. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that still carried across the hushed dining room. A mysterious husband, conveniently absent. "Look, sweetheart, I don't know what you're trying to pull, but Spago has standards. People like you don't just wander in here and sit at premium tables." He'd rushed to Elena's cheeks, not from shame but from anger. "I have every right to be here," she said, her voice steady. The woman's brow shot up in mock surprise. "Rights," she said. gesturing dramatically to the crystal chandeliers and sleek decor. This isn't some chain restaurant where anyone can walk in off the street. Do you even realize what it costs to eat here? Do you know who comes here? Elena's jaw tightened. She remembered Nathan's words in the car. You belong everywhere I belong. She clung to them now, even as they felt fragile in the face of this woman's venom. I know exactly where I am, Elena said quietly, and I know I belong here just as much as anyone else. The woman's mask of politeness cracked, her voice sharpening. Belong? Look at yourself. That dress looks like it came off a discount rack. Those shoes, please. You're out of your depth, dear. Elena's chest rose with a slow breath. Her voice didn't waver. My clothes don't define my worth. And they certainly don't give you the right to judge me. The woman's laughter was cold-cutting. Worth? Let me explain worth, darling. I'm Veronica Halston. My husband owns half the commercial real estate in Beverly Hills. We donate more to charity in 1 year than you'll see in a decade. I know everyone who matters in this city, and I can assure you, they would agree with me. People like you don't belong here. Around them, whispers rippled through the dining room. Guests leaned closer to hear, their curiosity sharpened like knives. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears, but her voice remained calm. I'm not disrupting anyone. I'm simply having dinner. No, Veronica snapped. You're making everyone uncomfortable. Look around you. Do you see anyone else dressed like they're headed to the grocery store? You're embarrassing yourself. Each word cut like a dagger, crafted to wound. But Elena, though shaken, kept her gaze steady. I think you should leave, Veronica continued, her voice rising enough to command the entire room. This isn't the kind of place where you can just pretend to be something you're not. Elena's voice trembled slightly, but her words carried enough strength to pierce the suffocating silence. I'm not pretending to be anything. I'm simply here to enjoy dinner with my husband. Veronica let out a dismissive laugh, waving her manicured hand as though shooing away a nuisance. Oh, please. We both know exactly what this is. You saw an opportunity, didn't you? Snuck into a fancy restaurant, hoping to catch the eye of some wealthy man who might take pity on you. Well, let me save you the trouble. It isn't working. Everyone here can see exactly what you are. The accusation landed like a blow. Elena's lips parted in shock. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, Veronica said coldly, leaning closer. I know you don't belong here. I know you're making people uncomfortable just by sitting at this table. And I know the longer you sit here pretending, the more pathetic you look. Elena's heart pounded, but she held her ground. Something deep inside refused to bow to this woman's cruelty. I have just as much right to be here as you do, she whispered, though her voice shook. Veronica's eyes gleamed, sensing weakness. She bent forward, her words sharp as glass. Leave now, quietly, before you embarrass yourself any further. Or I'll make sure everyone here knows exactly what kind of person you really are. The threat hung between them like a blade. Elena's instinct screamed to walk away, to escape before the humiliation deepened. But another part of her, the part that had fought for everything she had, rose up against the pressure. No, she said firmly, surprising even herself with the strength in her voice. I'm not leaving. I've done nothing wrong, and I will not be bullied. A flush of rage swept across Veronica's face. Her blue eyes blazed, her composure unraveling. For a moment, Elena thought she might simply storm off. Instead, Veronica's voice rang out across the restaurant, shrill and furious. How dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who I am? Every head turned, every eye fixed on the scene unfolding. I will not be insulted by some nobody who doesn't even belong in the same zip code as this restaurant, Veronica shouted. And then, before anyone could intervene, her hand lashed out. The slap cracked through the dining room like a gunshot. Elena's head snapped to the side, her cheeks stinging as gasps rippled through the crowd. Time seemed to freeze. Forks hovered in midair. Wine glasses trembled in stunned hands. The restaurant became a stage, every diner a silent witness to the assault. Veronica stood over her, chest heaving, her face twisted with righteous satisfaction. There, she hissed. Maybe now you'll understand that actions have consequences. You can't just waltz into places where you don't belong and expect to matter. Elena's hand rose instinctively to her burning cheek. The pain was sharp, but the humiliation cut deeper. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. She would not cry, not here, not in front of this woman. "You hit me," Elena whispered, her voice carrying eerily clear in the silence. Veronica smoothed her pristine white dress as though nothing had happened. "I defended myself. You were being aggressive. Everyone saw it." The blatant lie made Elena's stomach churn. "I never threatened you," she said, louder this time. "You approached me. You attacked me." But Veronica was already turning toward the room, her voice dripping with practiced authority. Did anyone else see how hostile she became when I merely tried to speak to her? The way she raised her voice, some diners shifted uneasily. Others avoided eye contact, calculating whose side was safer to take. Then from a table near the window, an elderly man with kind eyes spoke firmly. "No, she was perfectly polite. I saw the whole thing. You were the one who approached her. You were the one who struck her." The words from the elderly man sliced through the tension like a knife. Conversations that had been stilled for minutes suddenly began to stir again, whispers darting from table to table. Veronica's face flushed crimson. She spun toward the man, her eyes narrowing. "You must be mistaken. This woman was out of line. She doesn't belong here, and she knows it." The old man didn't flinch. "What I know," he said evenly, "is that I just watched you strike someone half your size for no reason other than prejudice." A ripple of uneasy murmurs spread across the room. Diners leaned in toward each other. Did she really just slap her? Over what? "She looks terrified." Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered knowingly. Veronica Halston had a reputation, and not a flattering one. Elena sat frozen, the sting in her cheek radiating outward, but something within her was shifting. The humiliation still clawed at her. Yet the stranger's words, the truth spoken aloud, gave her courage. "Social dynamics," Elena said suddenly, her voice clear enough to carry. She pushed herself up from her chair, her legs unsteady but her resolve hardening. "Is that what you call racism and assault?" The word racism cracked through the room like thunder. Gasps followed. Veronica's face blanched, but she snapped back with venom. "How dare you accuse me of that? Don't you dare play the race card. This has nothing to do with that. This is about class, about proper behavior." "You told me people like me don't belong here," Elena said, her voice stronger now. "You judged me based on my appearance. You decided I wasn't worthy of respect. Then you struck me. What would you call that?" "I'd call it reality," Veronica hissed. "Some people understand their place in the world. Others need to be reminded." Gasps turned into disgusted murmurs. Even those who had seemed sympathetic to Veronica now shifted uncomfortably. Her cruelty too stark to ignore. "Where's the manager?" she demanded suddenly, scanning the room. "I want this woman removed immediately. She's disruptive and threatening." As if on cue, a man in a tailored suit hurried over, his face pale. Clearly the restaurant manager, he glanced between the two women, his nervousness obvious. "Ladies, please," he said softly. "Perhaps we could resolve this privately." "There's nothing private about it," Veronica cut in sharply. "This woman doesn't belong here. Remove her." The manager hesitated, his gaze flicking to Elena. He saw the tear-streaked face, the trembling hands, and most damning of all, the angry red mark blooming across her cheek. He swallowed hard. "Mom," he said gently to Elena, "perhaps we could move you to a quieter section." The suggestion cut deeper than the slap. Even now, faced with the obvious, he was still choosing convenience over justice. "No," Elena said firmly, her voice shaking but resolute. "I was assaulted while sitting peacefully at my table. I've done nothing wrong, and I will not be moved." "She's exaggerating," Veronica snapped. "I barely touched her, and only because she was becoming aggressive." "The mark on her face suggests otherwise," the elderly man interjected, his voice carrying clearly. "And I'll gladly testify to what I witnessed." Veronica's head whipped toward him. "No one asked for your opinion, old man." She spat. "This is between me and her, a woman who thinks she can con her way into places she doesn't belong." The word con hit Elena like another strike. She straightened, her voice sharp. "What exactly do you think I'm trying to con?" Veronica smirked coldly. "Please, the absent husband." The sob story about belonging. "We both know what's happening." You're here hoping to lure some wealthy man, or maybe you're planning to sue the restaurant for attention. Either way, it's pathetic. The accusation was outrageous, almost absurd, but hearing it aloud with such conviction burned Elena to her core. You don't know me, Elena said, her voice gaining power now. You made assumptions based on ignorance and prejudice. And when I refused to submit to your bullying, you resorted to violence. That says everything about your character, nothing about mine.
Veronice's expression twisted, her voice rising with a venomous edge. Character? Don't lecture me about character while you're sitting here playing dress-up in a restaurant. You could never afford spinning stories about imaginary husbands. It's pathetic. Her words dripped with triumph, certain she had won the crowd back. But before she could continue, the air in the room shifted. The hushed murmur of voices died instantly. Dinah's eyes widened. Even Veronica faltered mid-sentence, her gaze snapping past Elena's shoulder. Elena turned and her breath caught. Nathan was striding toward the table. His tall frame radiated controlled fury, each step deliberate and powerful. His eyes, normally warm, mischievous green, were now icy steel. The energy around him was electric, the temperature in the room seeming to plummet. Veronice's lips curled into a relieved smile, mistaking his approach as support for her side. Finally, she said loudly enough for all to hear, "Someone with authority, sir, please tell this woman to leave immediately. She's been nothing but disruptive." Nathan stopped beside Elena, his gaze locked on Veronica with lethal calm. He placed a steady hand on his wife's shoulder, a protective gesture that radiated silent promise. When he spoke, his voice was low but carried across the room like thunder. "Did you just put your hands on my wife?" The words cracked through the silence like a whip. Gasps echoed around the dining room. Forks clattered against plates. Veronica froze, her triumphant smile dissolving into horror. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. Your wife," she stammered. The color drained from her face, her carefully applied makeup now stark against pale skin. Nathan's jaw tightened, his voice deepening. "My wife, Elena Brooks, the woman you just assaulted in front of dozens of witnesses." The collective intake of breath from the crowd was audible. Diners leaned forward, whispers exploding like wildfire. Phones appeared in hands, some recording, others frantically searching Nathan's name. "Wait, that's Nathan Brooks," someone whispered. "The tech billionaire. Nexus Industries." She slapped his wife. Veronice's knees seemed to weaken. She grabbed the back of a chair for balance, her hand trembling. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice cracking. "I didn't realize." Nathan stepped closer, towering over her. His words were calm, but the fury beneath them was unmistakable. "Didn't realize what?" "That she was married to someone with power. That she deserved respect only if she carried a designer bag." "I didn't mean." Veronica tried, her voice shrill. "You meant exactly what you did." Nathan cut in, his voice razor sharp. "You judged her by her appearance. You humiliated her, and then you hit her. In public." The restaurant fell. Silent again, every guest riveted, every phone pointed at the confrontation. Veronice's eyes darted frantically, searching for support, but no one moved to defend her. Not after hearing wife, not after realizing who Elena was. The manager stepped forward nervously. "Mr. Brooks, please, I assure you." If we had known, Nathan's head snapped toward him, his glare making the man flinch. "If you had known, are you saying my wife deserved this because you didn't recognize her? That assault is acceptable if the victim isn't wealthy enough." The manager's face turned ghostly pale. "And no, sir, of course not." Nathan turned back to Veronica. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, every word landing like a blow. "Explain to me, Mrs. Halston, what gave you the right to approach my wife, belittle her, humiliate her, and then put your hands on her?" Veronica's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Her voice, once commanding, now trembled. We've never been introduced. How do you even know my name?" Nathan's lips curved into a humorless smile. "I make it my business to know everyone who wields influence in the city. Your husband owns Halston Properties. You sit on charity boards. You pride yourself on being a pillar of this community." Each fact drained more color from Veronice's face. The realization that Nathan not only knew who she was but understood her reach, and her weaknesses stripped away the last of her composure. "And you," Nathan continued, his tone cutting sharper, "also have a reputation. This isn't the first time you've used your so-called social standing to belittle and bully those you consider beneath you, but I promise you it will be the last. The dining room went utterly still. The soft jazz drifting from the speakers felt surreal. Against the weight of his words, "Please," Veronica whispered, her perfectly manicured hands clutching the chair as though it could keep her from collapsing. "I made a mistake. You didn't mean to get caught," Nathan snapped, his voice low and merciless. "You didn't mean to discover that your victim wasn't powerless, but you absolutely meant every cruel word you said. You meant to humiliate her. You meant to strike her." Elena watched, her heart racing. She had never seen her husband like this, so fierce, so unrelenting. His fury wasn't for himself. It was for her, and that made it both terrifying and deeply moving. "Nathan," she whispered, placing a trembling hand on his arm. "Maybe we should." "No," he said firmly, though his gaze softened briefly as it fell on her. "You were assaulted, in public, by someone who thought you couldn't fight back. That's not something we sweep under the rug." His attention snapped back to Veronica, whose face was streaked with tears, her earlier arrogance shattered. "Mrs. Halston, you have one chance to explain yourself. Why did you think it was acceptable to put your hands on my wife?" Veronita's mouth opened and closed. Her voice was barely audible when it came. She didn't look like she belonged here. "I assumed." "You assumed," Nathan repeated icily. "You assumed her modest clothes meant she was beneath you. You assumed her skin, her quiet dignity, made her unworthy. You assumed wrong." "She didn't look," Veronica faltered. "Like what?" Nathan's voice was a blade now. "Like she deserved respect. Like she was a human being worthy of dignity." The restaurant seemed to lean closer, every ear, straining to catch the exchange. "That mark on her face tells the truth," called the elderly man from the window table. "And I'll gladly testify if legal action is pursued." The word legal hit Veronica like a slap of its own. She staggered, her hands shaking. "Legal action? No, you can't. We can settle this privately. My family's reputation, our children's." Future splees in Athens' jaw hardened. "You should have thought about consequences before you struck my wife. Actions have consequences, Mrs. Halston, and you're about to learn that lesson."
The air in the restaurant had turned heavy, each second stretched taut with suspense. Every diner was a witness, every phone a lens capturing the unraveling of Veronica Halston's carefully curated world. Elena, still trembling, touched the side of her burning cheek. The physical pain was sharp, but what lingered was the humiliation. Her voice, though shaky, carried clearly. "I was sitting here waiting for my husband. Mrs. Halston came to me. She said I didn't belong. She mocked my clothes. She told me I was playing a game, pretending to be something I'm not. And when I refused to leave, she hit me." The diners who had only caught fragments earlier now understood the whole of it. A low murmur of outrage moved across the room. "I didn't mean—" Veronica tried weakly, but Elena cut her off. "You told me I was pathetic. You told me I was trying to con someone, or that I was here to seduce a wealthy man. You said my husband was fiction, and when I stood my ground, you struck me. That's the truth." Her words echoed in the silence, undeniable. Nathan's hand tightened on hers, his voice rising with quiet authority. "What my wife isn't telling you is that this isn't the first time she's faced prejudice. She has spent her whole life being judged for things beyond her control." Elena's eyes widened at his words. They had talked about her past in private, but never had he spoken about it so openly. "She grew up in Detroit," Nathan said, his gaze sweeping the room, daring anyone to look away. "Her father died when she was 8. Her mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Elena worked from the age of 14, school during the day, shifts at night. And still she graduated top of her class." The room was hushed, spellbound. "She put herself through university," Nathan continued, his voice swelling with pride. "She worked nights at diners, weekends in laundromats, and graduated with honors in education. She dedicated her life to helping children who didn't have the advantages most of us take for granted." Elena blinked back tears, not from humiliation this time, but from love. Nathan was laying bare her story, turning what Veronica had mocked into a badge of honor. "When I met her," Nathan said, his tone softening, "she was making less than $30,000 a year, and yet she was donating half her vacation time to run literacy programs for kids who had no one else to fight for them. She's never asked me for a single thing. The only thing she wanted from me was to help others." Some diners began shaking their heads in disbelief, not at Nathan's words, but at Veronica, who had dared to treat Elena with such contempt. "The dress she's wearing tonight?" Nathan said, gesturing gently. "She chose it because it's comfortable. Because she doesn't believe in wasting money on clothes, when that money could be used to help families in need. That's who she is. And that," his voice hardened again, "is the woman you decided wasn't worthy of respect." Veronica finally broke. Her knees buckled, and she sank into the chair she had once clutched with arrogance. Tears streaked her face, her composure utterly destroyed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. You never meant to see the consequences," Nathan cut in coldly. "But consequences are here, Mrs. Halston, and you will answer for what you did." The silence in the restaurant was absolute. Even the soft jazz that usually provided background charm now seemed intrusive, surreal. Diners sat motionless, their attention locked on the drama unfolding before them. Nathan's tone softened only when he turned to Elena, brushing his thumb tenderly along the red mark on her cheek. "Does it hurt badly?" he whispered. Elena shook her head gently. "It stings, but I'm okay." "Really?" His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have had to endure that, any of it." "I should have been here." She placed her hand over his. "You couldn't have known. And I'm proud of how I handled it. I didn't back down, even when she tried to make me feel small." Nathan's expression shifted, pride shining through his fury. "You were magnificent," he said firmly. "I've never been more proud to call you my wife." Their intimate moment was cut short when the restaurant manager stepped forward again, wringing his hands. His face was pale, his voice nervous. "Mr. Brooks, please allow me to personally apologize for what happened here tonight. This is not the kind of environment we strive to maintain. I assure you, our staff values respect and dignity for all guests." Nathan straightened, though he kept a protective arm wrapped around Elena's shoulders. "Your staff isn't the problem," he said coldly. "But how you handle this situation will determine whether we, or anyone else, ever feels safe here again." The manager nodded quickly. "Of course, sir. Perhaps we can comp your meal tonight. Extend complimentary invitations for future dining." "That's a start," Nathan said carefully. "But this isn't about money. It's about making sure what happened to my wife never happens again." From her chair, Veronica suddenly lifted her tear-streaked face, desperation flickering in her eyes. "Yes," she said quickly, seizing the moment. "That's right. This was an unfortunate misunderstanding. A terrible lapse in judgment. Surely what matters now is moving forward constructively." Her attempt to frame her assault as a misunderstanding was met with sharp glares from several diners. Nathan's face hardened again. "There was no misunderstanding," he said icily. "You made choices. You acted on prejudice and entitlement. The only reason you're calling it a misunderstanding now is because you discovered your victim wasn't powerless." Elena could feel the tension building in her husband again, his protective instincts flaring like a fire. She gently squeezed his hand. "Nathan," she said softly, "let me speak." His gaze softened at once, his protective edge easing as he looked at her. "Of course," he murmured. "This is yours more than anyone else's." Elena rose slowly to her feet, the entire dining room holding its breath. She looked around at the sea of faces, some recording, some staring in sympathy, others in shame, and drew strength from the silence. "What happened tonight?" she began, her voice clear and steady. "Wasn't about wealth or status. It was about dignity. Mrs. Halston didn't know who I was married to when she told me I didn't belong here. She judged me by my appearance and my skin. She believed that gave her the right to humiliate me. That's the real issue." The words landed with weight. Diners nodded, some avoiding her eyes as though confronted with their own hidden prejudices. "If I had been a single mother saving for one special night, would that have made her behavior any less wrong?" Elena asked. The rhetorical question hung heavy in the air, cutting deeper than any accusation.
"I grew up poor," Elena continued, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. "I know what it feels like to walk into places where people judge you before you've even spoken. I know what it's like to be dismissed because of how you look or what you wear. And tonight, I was told again that I didn't belong. Nathan's arm rested protectively along her shoulders as she spoke, but his eyes never left Veronica. His silent fury radiated beside Eleanor's calm resolve, the two of them a united front. What Mrs. Halston did tonight, Eleanor pressed on, wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's ever been made to feel small because someone else decided they weren't worthy. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She thought I couldn't. Her eyes locked on Veronica, who sat trembling, broken. But I can, and I will. The room erupted in quiet applause, hesitant at first, then swelling as diners clapped, nodding in agreement. Eleanor turned back to Veronica. I accept your apology, but apologies are words. Actions matter more. For the next 6 months, you're going to volunteer at a literacy center. You'll work with the children society ignores. You'll look them in the eye and see their worth. Only then will you begin to understand. Veronica's mouth fell open in shock. Volunteer at a literacy center? I don't know anything about that sort of thing. Then you'll learn, Eleanor said firmly. You'll learn what it means to serve others instead of expecting to be served. You'll learn what real dignity looked like. Nathan's voice, low and firm, cut in beside her. And if you refuse, if you use this as some photo op to restore your image, then we will pursue every legal and social avenue available. And believe me, we won't stop until the truth about tonight is known in every corner of this city. Veronica's eyes widened. With fear, mascara streaking down her face. I'll do it, she whispered, nodding frantically. I'll do it, whatever you ask. Good, Eleanor replied, because this isn't just about you. It's about making sure no one else has to endure what I endured tonight. Nathan kissed the top of her head gently. I love you, he whispered, voice thick with pride. But before the fragile peace could settle, Veronica's phone buzzed loudly on the table. Her eyes darted to the screen, and something changed. The trembling mask slipped, replaced by a cold calculation. She stood slowly, smoothing down her dress, trying to reclaim the commanding presence she had lost. Actually, she said, her voice steadier now, I think I need to reconsider this situation. The room stirred uneasily. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Reconsider what, exactly? Veronica lifted her chin, forcing arrogance back into her tone. I've been sitting here listening to threats and ultimatums, but I am remembering exactly who I am and what my family means in this community. Gasps rippled through the diners. After everything, she was choosing defiance. Eleanor's voice remained calm. Mrs. Halston, we gave you a chance to change, to make this right. Don't throw it away. Change. Veronica scoffed. Learn from you? From someone who came here in bargain clothes and pretended to belong. Please. You may have fooled your husband into believing your little act, but I see right through you. The words struck the restaurant like thunder. Whispers rose instantly. Disbelief and outrage colliding. Nathan's voice dropped into a deadly calm. What did you just say? Veronica leaned forward, emboldened by her own desperation. I said what everyone here is too polite to admit. Your wife is a gold digger. She played the long game. She got lucky. That's all this is. Stop, Nathan warned, his voice so sharp that several nearby diners flinched. But Veronica was unraveling, her humiliation transforming into wild attack. No, I won't stop. This woman manipulated you, Mr. Brooks. She dressed herself in humility, spun her sob stories, and made you believe she was different. But she isn't. She saw her chance and she took it. Eleanor's chest tightened at the words, every old insecurity flaring. But before Nathan could respond, she placed a steadying hand on his arm. Her voice, quiet yet firm, carried through the stunned restaurant. Let her finish. Let everyone hear what she really thinks. Veronica smirked, mistaking Eleanor's calm for surrender. The story of a coffee shop chance meeting. Please. You expect me to believe it wasn't calculated? She probably staked out that cafe for weeks, waiting for the perfect mark, and you fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Eleanor felt the sting of the words, but she didn't look away. Everything about her has been an act. Veronica pressed on, her voice gaining strength. The modest clothes, the reluctance to spend money, the whole humble routine, it's all a ploy to keep you blind. Nathan, she's been playing you since day one. The restaurant buzzed with murmurs, some shocked, others disgusted. Yet no one stepped into silence. Veronica. Nathan's voice was like ice. You are crossing a line you can never return from. But Veronica only straightened her spine. defiance blazing in her eyes. Elena's voice broke the tension, calm, controlled, stronger than it had ever been. "You've said enough, Mrs. Halston. Everyone here has heard your hatred, and now they'll remember it." Her words landed like iron. The diners shifted uncomfortably, their gazes bouncing between Elena and the trembling wreck of Veronica, who had begun to realize she had gone too far. "You think my life with Nathan is some kind of performance?" Elena asked, her tone sharp but dignified. "That my love, my choices, my sacrifices are all a con? You don't know me. You never did." Nathan stepped forward, his presence looming. "And you never will, because after tonight, your name will be tied to this moment forever." Phones were still recording, dozens of them. Veronica's face blanched, her earlier arrogance collapsing as she realized the permanent damage already done. "You wanted to remind my wife of her place," Nathan said, his voice booming with finality. "Consider it done, and her place is right here, beside me, where she belongs." The restaurant erupted in applause, louder this time, filled with conviction. Elena blinked back, tears, not of humiliation, but of strength reclaimed. Veronica sank back into her chair, her fight finally extinguished, the weight of her downfall pressing her into silence. The applause faded slowly, but its echo lingered in the air like a judgment that couldn't be erased. Veronica sat frozen, mascara streaking her cheeks, her diamond bracelet trembling on her wrist as she tried to gather what little dignity she had left. But it was gone, all of it. Nathan drew Elena closer, his protective embrace undeniable. "We're done here," he said with finality. "Let the record show what really happened tonight." The elderly man from the window table stood, his voice steady and resolute. "And I'll gladly testify, if this matter goes to court, that woman was assaulted for nothing more than her appearance. It cannot stand." Murmurs of agreement rippled across the room. Other diners nodded, some muttering words of disgust toward Veronica, others applauding Elena softly once more. The tide of opinion had shifted fully, irreversibly. The restaurant manager stepped forward cautiously. "Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, please know that we are deeply ashamed this happened in our establishment. We will do everything necessary to ensure such an incident is never repeated." Nathan gave a sharp nod. "See that you do." Elena, still holding her composure, turned one last time to Veronica. Her voice was calm, but laced with steel. "I gave you a chance to learn, to do something meaningful, to grow, and you threw it away. That will be your burden to carry, not mine." Veronica looked up at her, lips parted as if to protest, but no words came. She had lost her power. The entire room had witnessed it. Nathan guided Elena toward the exit, his arm firm around her waist. Every diner turned to watch them leave, phones still lifted, cameras still flashing. The image of Elena's quiet strength beside her husband's commanding presence would be the memory burned into every mind that night outside. The cool night air of Beverly Hills washed over them. Elena inhaled deeply, as though cleansing herself of the toxicity that had filled the restaurant. Nathan's hand rested protectively at the small of her back as they walked toward the waiting car. "I'm so sorry," Nathan said quietly once they were inside, his voice cracking in a way she rarely heard. "I should have been there. You should never have faced that alone." Elena took his hand gently. "You don't need to apologize. You came when it mattered, and I'm proud of myself." I stood up to her. Nathan turned to her, his eyes blazing with admiration. "You didn't just stand up to her, you showed everyone in that room who you are. Dignified, strong, unshakable." For a moment, silence filled the car, heavy but comforting. The driver pulled them away from the glowing facade of the restaurant, the city lights blurring past. Elena leaned her head against Nathan's shoulder. "Do you think she'll actually do it? Volunteer? I mean," Nathan exhaled slowly, "whether she does or doesn't, it doesn't matter. Her reputation is finished. The world will know her for what she is." Elena closed her eyes, exhaustion settling in. "I don't want to destroy her. I just wanted her to see, to understand." Nathan kissed her forehead softly. "And that's exactly why you're different from her. Because even after everything she did, your instinct isn't vengeance, it's compassion." Elena smiled faintly, though her cheeks still stung. "Maybe compassion is the strongest weapon of all." By morning, the confrontation was everywhere. Clips recorded by diners had flooded social media overnight. Headlines screamed across platforms. "Socialized strikes woman in Beverly Hills restaurant. Billionaire's wife publicly assaulted." Entitled heiress faces backlash after Viral incident. News programs replayed the footage in loops, analyzing every second. Commentators debated privilege, racism, class, and the power dynamics laid bare in that dining room. Elena sat in the sunlit kitchen of their Bel-Air home, scrolling through her phone with mixed emotions. Messages poured in support from strangers, gratitude from people who had faced similar prejudice, admiration for her strength. Nathan entered, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of her and kissed the top of her head. "It's everywhere," he said simply. "I know." Elena's voice was soft. "I don't know how to feel about it. Exposed, I guess. But also, relieved. Maybe this will make people think." Nathan pulled out the chair beside her and sat. "It already has. Look at this." He turned his tablet toward her, showing headlines of community leaders calling for change, of organizations inviting her to speak, of messages from thousands, of ordinary people sharing their own stories. Elena blinked back tears. "I never wanted to be the center of attention, but if this helps others, then it's worth it." Nathan finished for her. She nodded, her hand finding his as the days passed. The fallout from that night only deepened. Veronica Halston's name was splashed across tabloids and business journals alike. Sponsors quietly withdrew from events she chaired. Charities she once sat on the board for began distancing themselves. Invitations to exclusive galas evaporated overnight. But the most striking image wasn't her downfall, it was Elena's composure in the face of it all. Clips of her calm speech, of her insistence on dignity and compassion, were replayed again and again. Students in classrooms discussed it. Community leaders praised it. Ordinary people shared it with captions like "This is strength." Elena herself remained humble. She spent her mornings at the literacy center where she had once worked, slipping into her old role with ease. The children lit up when they saw her, unbothered by the sudden fame swirling around her name. One afternoon, as she read aloud to a group of wide-eyed kids, Nathan arrived quietly at the doorway. He stood for a moment, watching her, this woman who had been ridiculed for her modest dress. Now standing tall as a symbol of Grace Dodd after the lesson, Elena joined him in the hallway. "What are you smiling at?" she teased, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You," Nathan said simply, "you have no idea how extraordinary you are." "Do you?" She laughed softly. "Extraordinary? I'm just me." "Exactly," Nathan replied. "That's what the world saw, and that's why they can't forget you." Meanwhile, Veronica fought desperately to control the damage. She issued public apologies. Though few believed their sincerity, she hired crisis managers, released statements about personal growth, even attempted to be photographed at volunteer events. But every appearance was met with skepticism, her arrogance during the confrontation, the sneer, the slap, the accusation of gold digging had been captured vividly. It wasn't something that could be erased by a press release. Elena, however, refused to revel in Veronica's misery. When asked by reporters, she never spoke with bitterness. She simply repeated her message: everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves respect. Wealth or status doesn't determine worth. This quiet persistence made her voice even more powerful. Invitations poured in for her to speak at conferences, schools, and charities. Yet she remained careful. "I don't want to become a spectacle," she told Nathan one evening as they sat on the terrace. "I just want to keep doing what I've always done, help where I can." Nathan took her hand. "And that's exactly why people want to listen. Because they know you mean it." The stars glittered above them, the city glowing below. But in that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to the two of them, unshakable. 10 minutes later, Elena stood at the podium of a packed auditorium. The crowd was filled with educators, community leaders, and young students. Her speech was being streamed live, her voice reaching far beyond the walls of the room. She told her story not of wealth or of being married to a billionaire, but of growing up in Detroit, of working nights to afford tuition, of believing that words and knowledge could change lives. She spoke of dignity, of respect, of the danger of judging others by appearances, and then, gently but firmly, she spoke of that night in Beverly Hills when someone told me I didn't belong. I remembered every child I'd ever met who had been told the same, and I realized standing up wasn't just for me, it was for them, for all of us. The audience rose to its feet, applause thundering. Elena stood tall, her modest dress a deliberate choice, her voice carrying like a beacon dot in the front row. Nathan watched with tears in his eyes. Pride swelled in his chest, not because of the empire he had built, but because of the woman beside him, the woman who had faced cruelty and transformed it into strength. Later, when the applause had faded and the stage lights dimmed, Elena and Nathan walked hand in hand into the night. The world might always judge, always whisper, always assume, but together they knew the truth, and in that truth lay their greatest power.